Today is the 22nd day of Kislev, and it is also the 16th day of December, right? 16th? I believe so. And we're learning Likkutei Sichot, Volume 1, on Vayeishev. And yesterday we talked about the principle of having to reach nothingness, to reach non-being in order to make a profit in anything. And this is also true spiritually, that in order to ingather the sparks of holiness that fell into our world, a person has to be in a state of nullification, has to be in a state of non-being. That's called yesh mefazer v'nosaf od. That's called that a person is, as it were, squandering. He's throwing out his belongings, and yet he gains. So that's like a person who sows a field, and takes his seed, and he sows the field, and then he gets back 100 times what he sowed. If it cost him 50 shekels, $50 for the bag of seed, he gets back $5,000 in produce.
But Yaakov Avinu crossed over to the other side of the river to go and pick up a few jars.
Mm-hmm.
And the river says that that's a siman that when a person's about tshuva, he's supposed to take with him all that he had and turn it into kedusha.
Mm-hmm.
That's not mefazer.
Oh, that's things you already had. Well, why would you give up what you have? In fact,
You said a person's supposed to mefazer.
no, that's you mefazer a certain type of thing. Not you don't give up your possessions.
No, but playing the guitar, for example.
So you take it and then you play the guitar. For many, many people, that's the mefazer. But you have to first of all gather it. You can't leave it behind. That's the one of the biggest problems that Bali Tshuva had before the Rebbe, but even after the Rebbe, a lot of them didn't understand this. Is that whatever God gave you, bashgacha, before, is not something that you have to divorce yourself from. You don't need to dissociate yourself from your past identity. You have to take the good pieces. All the talents that you have are definitely good, and you have to find a way to incorporate them afterwards in kedusha. That's that stage of being you. The next stage is, now that you have these talents, now you squander them. Now that you have them, if you're a writer, so you write a lot, and a lot of it goes to the trash. It's one of the things that a lot of people have a hard time with, because most people don't deal with creativity. But if you're creative or you're in manufacturing, you know that a great deal of what you produce goes to the garbage. It doesn't produce anything. But that's okay, because the part that does produce something, the part that does go and is successful, makes up many times over for what didn't produce. The same thing in a field. When you sow seed, so a certain percentage of the seed is not going to catch, it's not going to grow, and there's not going to be any produce from it. But that's fine, because the rest of the seed that did catch, and that did grow, and that did produce what you were looking for, makes it many times over. So it's worth it. When people are not in creative arts, they don't understand this. They don't understand that, when you write something, it might be that if you're a writer, 90% of what you write goes into the trash in the end. It's not worthy of being published. And even those things that you think are worthy of being published, it's very uncommon that everything that you publish is really successful. And you get another 90% that is failed on, And then the 1% that does works very well. And you have to be willing to produce that amount in order to hit that 1%. Because if you're not going to, that's in creativity. If you're like a lawyer, that's not a very good strategy. You can't win 1% of your cases, unless you're going for really, really high profile, but you still couldn't do that because you have to have a certain reputation for winning. So those are not creative endeavors. Whenever you're talking about creativity, that's the way it works. That less and less comes down as you reach further and further into reality. Okay. So what do we get out of this? That Yaakov dwelt in this land, and the fact that he feels his nullification, that's what allows him to gather the what?
Where did you jump to?
We're on page 67. Let's read it again because I see that maybe it didn't click the first time. V'zu hakavana. So I'm reading this third paragraph. V'zu hakavana be'emshech pasuk be'eretz Canaan. Why does it also have to mention that the land that he's in is the land of Canaan? Because Canaan means being a merchant. We are all merchants. How are we merchants? So maybe here it's not so explained, but we're all merchants because it's the divine soul that comes down into the body is a merchant. It's saying, it's even Canaan is not just any merchant. It's a merchant who is a cheat, because the pasuk in Isaiah is Canaan biado moznei mirma, that Canaan has in his hands faulty scales. And why does he put faulty scales there? Because he wants to cheat you. So he says, I'm giving you a kilogram of this of gold, but he really gives you only 900 grams because his scales are off. So he says, we're all like that. How are we like that? Because the divine soul comes down and it says, okay, I'm going to be in the body for 70, 80 years, and most of the time I'm going to be cheating. How am I going to cheat? How am I going to cheat here? It's going to seem like most of the time I'm being taken along for a ride, that you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to sleep, you have this pleasure, that pleasure. Most of the time he's got to make a living, and the divine soul is along for the ride. It's like not saying anything. I said, but that's fine, because every day he wakes up in the morning and he goes to daven. Though that 1% of his time, or 10% of his time, whatever it is, that is the real profit. So he's making as if this doesn't, it's all mundane, it's nothing. He says every soul goes through that, has to learn that. It has to learn how to cheat the world, as it were, because really, what are you doing? You're saying, oh, I'm like everyone else. I need to have a house, I need to have furniture, I need to have a car, I need this, I do all these things. I'm like a regular person. But then, in the morning, and in the afternoon, and in the evening, he goes to this place, and he davens to Hashem. What happened? He's not like a regular person. He puts on tefillin. He's not like he keeps Shabbos. He's not like a regular person. He's cheating the world. I look like a regular person, but I'm not. And then the worst thing that he does is, he says, all the money that I made believe that I'm making in order to spend like everyone else, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of it, I'm giving to charity, to tzedakah. That's cheating. As far as the world's concerned, that's cheating. Baruch Hashem, today we live in a world, right? When this was written, but the original Hasidic Maimarim about this were written 200 years ago. So this idea of giving charity was not very common. Today, the big names, the big people, supposedly have funds, right? That they give a lot of charity, but it's not true. They don't give a lot of charity. They make believe that they do. They give 5%, 4%, 3%. I don't know what they give. They don't give 20%. They certainly don't give 50%. Okay, but that's what the Jew does. So he's cheating the system. The whole system was built on the premise that you're all going to be consumers and you're just going to hoard your money. And what are you doing? What is this? So this is, in that sense, we're all cheating. So in that sense, our source is in Canaan. And in Canaan, again, means a merchant who's a cheater in that sense. Again, it's a bad word, you say cheating. But when you think about it, the way of the world is all mundane. And a Jew comes and cheats that. And he comes and says, I'm using the mundane to create something spiritual. So what do we take from this, says the Rebbe? אין ליהודי לתור אחרי דברים נעלים דווקא, ועבודתו צריכה להיות רק לברר ולהעלות את ניצוצות הקדושה הנמצאים בדברים גשמיים. A Jew should not be in search of lofty things to do. You might think, oh, if I'm not the manager of Chase of Manhattan, I'm nothing. He says, no, anything that you're dealing with has the sparks of holiness that you need to raise, and the way that you do it is, even if you're a mailman, and you get a salary at the end of the month, and you give from that salary 20% to tzedakah, you've just elevated your part of the world. And so many people, now you don't need to anticipate, maybe I will do great things, but he can't wait for it. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, that's what you need to be engaged in. ומה מטרת פעולה זו? אביב. And why do I do this? Why do I raise the sparks? Why do I elevate them? I need to have, like we said yesterday, a hive mind. I do it for the sake of the hive. I do it for the sake of Hashem, His Father in heaven. So, Eretz Megurei Aviv, the land of the treasures of his father. Yisrael nimshalu lidvora. And here he says that the Jewish people are likened in the Medrash to a bee. Madvora kol mash mesagelet enam sagelet ela leba'al habayit. The dvora, the bee. By the way, this is also an interesting point. I have to digress. The word dvora, what word does it come from?
Dov?
From the dov, right? The origin is dov, and there's another word that comes from dov, dvash. Dvora and dvash come from the same two-letter root. That's why bears like to eat honey. And dvash is honey, because they make honey. The bees make honey, and the bears eat it. It's very interesting. So I thought this was something in Hebrew, but it's also in Russian. How do you say honey in Russian? Med. It's the same thing as in Old English. Mead. Yeah. Mead is like the drink that you make out of honey. You ferment honey, and it becomes alcoholic. So how do you say a bear in English? In Russian, medved. One who loves honey. Literally, that's. So in Russian, it's like a little bit different, but it's the same idea that these three words are connected. But I don't know about the bee. I think I asked someone about the bee, and they said it's not like a med. But in Hebrew, these three words are almost the same. They come from the same root in any case. It's the same two-letter root. And in any case, the bee, all it does for the sake of the hive, for its owner, for the hive. Same way, a Jew inside, he knows that everything he's doing is for the sake of his Father in heaven. What does it mean? That he's doing it for the ideal of collecting the sparks, not for himself. He's not doing it in order to receive a reward, whether it be a physical or a spiritual reward, not even a spiritual one. But rather, all the work that he does to collect these sparks is for the sake of his Father in heaven. In order for a person to come to a place where he doesn't have a bias in what he does, pniyah is a bias. I have interest in it. I have some self-interest in this. I want to do this because this is what I'm interested in. I have some. I want to. It's not just that I want to do the mitzvah. I have some ulterior motive in what I do. So to come to a place where you're not doing it for these biases, for these self-interests that you have, it's easier to do this when you concentrate on simple things. Simple things. Meaning, my simple thing is that I go to daven in a minyan 3 times a day. A very simple thing. It's no fanfare there. Right? My simple thing is that I give tzedakah every time that I go to daven, and I give tzedakah to this organization, this person, that person, that person, this person, and I do this consistently all the years of my life, whatever it is. Simple things. Nothing great, nothing grand. Because when you do the opposite, when you're engaged in lofty things, like, for instance, a person says, I'm going to write a doctorate on, I don't know, the Rebbe, and this is what's going to make him famous throughout the world, whatever. The moment it's something that complex, there's no chance that your self-interest is not going to be involved. It has to be involved. Why does it have to be involved? Because what does self-interest really represent? Interest. I have an interest in it. A person doesn't usually have interest in simple things. There's no invested interest. It's like he just does it with Kabbalah Soul. He does it with selflessness. He says, I have to nullify myself in order to do these things. That's how a person usually thinks. But when it comes to something that I'm interested in, I begin to have interests. Interests in the sense of biases. It doesn't have to be, but it's a lot harder to keep the interests out of something that is interesting to me. וכדי שהעבודה תהיה נקייה ללא פניות, צריך להיות הדבר על ידי עבודה פשוטה בעניינים פשוטים דווקא. And in order for the work to be clean, without interests, without self-interest, without biases, it has to be something simple, something straightforward, with simple things. כדברי כך מורי וחמי אדמו"ר, as my father-in-law said, הפשיטות של אנשים פשוטים מתקשרת עם פשיטות העצמאות. That the simple, sincere demeanor of simple people is a reflection of God's simplicity. When we say God's simplicity, what do we mean? Pshitut ha'atzmut. It's like that in the end, God's substance is the simplest thing ever. Why? Because it's monolithic. It's just one thing. There's nothing there except for one thing, just His being. There's no highbrow philosophy. There's no mathematics there. There's no Torah there. There's nothing there except for the very fact that God is. And that is reflected in a simple person who simply is. That's what he is. He simply exists. That's why the Baal Shem Tov loved simple Jews. And he said, in the simple Jews, I see godliness much more than I see it in the greatest scholars. And not that you don't see it in the greatest scholars, you also see. But it's not the same level as what you see in a simple Jew, and what you see in somebody who's simple and sincere. וזוהי מעלת הקבלת עול, שבגללה נקראים בני ישראל בשם צבאות השם, כי עניינו של חייל הוא קבלת עול. And this is the greatness of the Jewish people, that they receive the yoke of heaven, and that's why they're called the army of God, because a soldier is someone who receives the yoke of his duties in the army, and he doesn't involve himself in whatever's higher than what he's meant to do. By the way, I just came from a class with someone. I was teaching someone in Los Angeles, like I do on Friday mornings, and we were talking about. She's British, and we're talking about the monarchy in England. And from the conversation, something very simple came out, which is, first of all, the sages say every Jew is a king, is either a king or a son of a king. What do they mean to say? I mean, I'm not royalty. Are you royalty? You're British, maybe you're royalty. So, what do they mean to say? They mean to say that when God gave us the Torah, He said you'll be people translate it as a nation of priests, but that's not the right translation. A kingdom of priests. But you're not just a kingdom, you're a Ben Melech, you're as part of the kingdom, we're all one family, so we're all related to the crown. We're all part of the crown. What's our crown? Our crown is Torah. Keter Torah. Now, what does it mean that we have a crown? It means that you can either respect the crown or not. If you're a good part of the royal family, this royal family called Jews, it means that you respect what the crown stands for. What is Torah about? What are the principles that govern someone who's part of this royal family? You see that even in royal families, especially in the British one, you see this all the time. There's one in this generation also. There's people who they say they make mistakes, but it's not really mistakes. They simply don't respect the crown. They don't care. So this guy, Henry, whatever his name is, who ran off with some Canadian actress, it's not because he made a mistake. He said, this thing called the royal family, what it stands for is monarchy. I don't believe in that. When a Jew believes in his inheritance, in his pedigree, he acts a certain way. It's not comfortable for them, it's not easy, and they have much less to do than we do. Every Jew probably has more, in a certain sense, has more duties than even somebody in a Windsor palace, right? But you have to have respect for it. I remember that in The Crown, you don't know about this because you don't watch these things, but there's a series called The Crown that the whole world loves now. It's about Elizabeth's life. So it started out with her younger years. And so there's this one scene that somebody showed me that's incredible. she sits like at a desk and she's learning about the duties of a member of the royal family, especially someone who's, she was next in, somehow next in line after, because the guy who abdicated didn't have children, whatever his name was. So she was next in line. So she reads these sentences that she was taught about what her duties are. And you can't say, wait a minute, this is what Jewish children do from the age of 6. They read these sentences. We have all these musty old books that are really not musty and not old at all, because we perform them and we respect what they say. That this is how a member of this royal family called Judaism acts. If you don't understand this because you're royalty, it's like, I have to do this. What do you mean you have to do this? You have to do it because you accept the yoke, but it has to start with respect for it. If you don't respect it, if you don't respect the royalty that you're part of, it really doesn't mean anything.
Let's go down.
So we'll end now, and we'll wish everyone good Shabbos. And hopefully that we will all respect the royal family that we come from.